Welcome to the technical session 4B of 5th International Conference on ICT 4SD. Due to COVID-19, we all are facing a new normal phase and the theme of ICT 4SD, which is your safe and healthy time for you and your well-wishers. We are constantly trying to overcome the challenges that research community is facing at a different level. We at the Global Knowledge Research Foundation are fully committed to contribute and enhance the digital experience in research activities. To continue further, this conference has received tremendous number of submissions, which has across more than 1,000 plus number and 20 plus countries marked through direct submission and special sessions, out of which 340 papers were accepted by the technical review committee, and we were only able to accommodate 160 paper in a 2-volume of this year publication. Once again, we all would like to congratulate you for your research work and to be a part of this success story in a 5th version of this conference. Further, I would like to welcome our session chair, Dr. Amita Sharma, the Senior Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science and IT in IIS University, Jaipur. She has more than 13 years of teaching experience. Her area of interest is software engineering, networking and security, data mining and knowledge discovery, database system, web service, and Vedic science and modern theories. Welcome, ma'am. Now we start our presentation. Now I would like to invite our first presenter, Preeti Ranjan Sahu. Is Preeti Ranjan Sahu?
I think so. Preeti's left the session, so go ahead with the next.
Yeah, so I would like to invite Anis John.
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please start your presentation.
Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anis John, and I'm going to present the topic logistically supervised aspect category detection using data co-occurrence for sentiment analysis. Word of mouth has always influenced consumer decision making. That is, families and friends are often asked for advice regarding the purchase of a particular product or service. With the web, electronic word of mouth came into being. That is, anyone can share their opinion regarding the purchase of a particular product or service, etc. So, which helps in decision making also. With the web, electronic word of mouth came into being. That is, they can express, the consumers can express their feelings or the sentiments regarding a particular project through web. But these reviews contain a large amount of information. So, reading these reviews one at a time is a very time-consuming and tedious task. Therefore, summarization of these reviews are desired. And one of this can be done by identifying the topics with which the review or the sentence is being referred to. That is aspect. Aspects are the topic with which the sentence is being referred to. And the category to which they belong are called the aspect categories. For example, in the consider the given sentence, here the aspects are the fish, rice, and seaweed. That is the topic with which the sentence is being referred. And the category to which they belong is called the aspect category. That is food. Early works focused on finding the explicit aspects, that is, aspects mentioned within the sentences, and they failed to detect the aspects which are implied within the sentence. And they often considered. Am I audible? Am I audible? Sir, hello? Hello?
Anis, your share screen is off. So
am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Anis. Yes, go ahead with the slide. Yes.
Thank you. Most of the works, they consider only the noun and hello, sir, can you see the slide?
Yes, we are able to see.
Most of the works considered only the noun and adjectives as the opinion words and aspect respectively. They did not consider other words, and also they did not consider the grammatical dependencies of the sentences, which actually have a very great influence in decision making for aspect category detection. The proposed approach is actually a hybrid approach comprising of the three approaches. There is the co-occurrence approach, the LR approach, and the Wu-Palmer approach. First is the co-occurrence approach. In this approach, the co-occurrence between the lemmas and the category and the dependencies and the categories are found. That is, the training set will provide the annotated categories. Here I took the restaurant review data set, and so it has 5 annotated categories. That is food, service, ambience, price, and the default category. That is miscellaneous category. So here the grammatical dependencies are considered. Grammatical dependencies are nothing but the grammatical relation between the words of the sentence. For example, the importance of the grammatical dependencies can be understood by the following 2 examples. That is, assume that there is a category called food. Most of the time, the word food will actually indicate the category that is food itself, as seen in the first sentence. But in the second sentence, we can see that even though the category word food is there in the sentence, it doesn't mean that the food is the category of that particular sentence. Here in the second sentence, the category with which is referred to is that is joint or the restaurant. So in this case, in the first sentence, we can see that the food is used as a subject, whereas in the second sentence, the food is used as a modifier to modify the word joint. So this proves that the grammatical dependencies, to a large extent, also helps in the design as the category. Co-occurrence approach is basically comprises of 4 steps. That is, first step is actually to find the lemmas and dependencies. That is, after the pre-processing the data, the training set and test set are both passed to the lematizer and the dependency parser. The result will be a set of lemmas, and the 3 forms of dependencies are obtained here. The dependencies are used using the Stanford code NLP. Then second step is to calculate the weight matrix. That is, first of all, the occurrence of the lemmas and dependencies are calculated, and the co-occurrence of the lemmas and category, as well as the dependencies and categories, are also computed, and they are stored in a weight matrix, the co-occurrence matrix. And for each entry in the co-occurrence matrix, the weight matrix is calculated. The weight matrix is nothing but the conditional probability of the corresponding category or lemma, or the dependency and the lemma. So dependency and the category. The next step is threshold estimation. That is, for each of the category, 4 different threshold values are found out. That is, 1 for the lemma and 3 other for the 3 dependencies. So each of the category will have 4 different types of threshold values are. That is, the linear search is executed, and the best performing threshold value is taken as a threshold value. Then the final step is actually the category detection. That is, for each of the unseen sentences in the test set, the category are detected. That is, find out the lemmas and the dependencies, and the maximum conditional probability of the lemmas and dependencies are taken, and they are compared with the threshold values. If the maximum conditional probability surpasses the category's threshold, then that particular category will be assigned as the category of the particular sentence. The problem identified here is that the miscellaneous category was not correctly classified. That is, it was assigned whenever the algorithm fails to detect any category, it was just assigned as a miscellaneous category, even though it might not be the same. So a solution to this is actually to apply logistic regression. Logistic regression is a machine learning algorithm which is based on the concept of probability. That is, it predicts the value of a particular categorical variable depending upon the predictor variables. That is, first of all, here the steps involved are first creating the data set. That is, each of the review in the data set is considered as a sample, and the features are the lemmas and the dependencies, and the labels are the category. That is, given a set of features, we have to predict the category, that is the label.
Anis, you have last 2 minutes. Please conclude.
Okay, fine. Next step is actually to build the model. Here, the co-occurrence of the lemmas and the dependencies with the categories are found out. And the next step is actually training the model. That is, the weights are adjusted so that the best fit is obtained. And the final step is actually making prediction. That is, asking the fitted model to predict the category of a particular sentence or the review. Now, the early 2 approaches are actually were used whenever the sentences contains the words or lemmas within the training set. Now, what happens when a word or lemma word which is not previously mentioned in the training set? In that case, we are using Wu-Palmer approach. that is, group panel is a similarity measure which measures the similarity between two words, how close they are to each other. So group panel approach is actually based on WordNet, which is a lexical database. WordNet contains a group of words called, of the synonyms called synsets. So whenever a sentence with words which is not previously mentioned in the training set occurs, the unknown lemma is taken and the synsets, corresponding synsets are also taken. And these synsets are combined with the known lemmas of the training set, and the maximum similarity measured lemma is chosen as the replacement. And so the corresponding category to which it belongs is taken as the aspect category for the unknown sentence. So the proposed method is a hybrid approach comprising of co-occurrence, LR, and group planning approach. Project environment uses Python, and NLTK library is used for pre-processing, and sklearn is used for the machine learning processes. The results here is that this shows evaluation scores for the method using the lemmas only. And this is actually showing both using the lemmas and dependencies. It is clearly seeing that the using both lemmas and dependencies give a much more evaluation measure than using only the lemmas. And this is the evaluation score of the proposed hybrid approach. You can see that the proposed hybrid approach outperforms the other method. So here the text preprocessing framework is done by summarizing the reviews, and here a combination of three methods, a hybrid of three methods is used. First is a co-occurrence method, second is a logistic regression method which is based upon machine learning, and the third one is used as a group measure, group approach which is actually based on similarity measure. The experimental results clearly show an improved performance in aspect detection. And these are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Anis. Before moving forward, I would like to invite and welcome our next session chair, the Dr. Satyen Parekh. He's an Executive Dean, Faculty of Computer Application in Ganpat University, Ahmedabad. He has a 20 years of experience and his interest area in academic and administrative activities of university and development of new program to develop better professional opportunity for you. Welcome, sir. Now, I will ask to Dr. Satyen Parekh and Dr. Amita Sharma for a question answering round. Any question regarding this presentation?
Actually, I joined in between. So if Amita madam has any question, then I think she can proceed.
Yes, sir. Amita ma'am, please go ahead.
I think so. Amita ma'am is not available, so we will proceed for the next presentation. Dr. Preeti Ranjan Sahu.
Yeah. Good morning. Let me share my screen. Before I share my screen, I'm thankful to the organizer. They have been doing a great job since yesterday, and I have been watching them, listening to them. Great speakers. Thank you very much. Let me start my presentation. Yeah. I believe my slides are visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
I'm also visible. Thank you. So this topic is a very interesting topic. We started working sometime back, me and my scholar, we wanted to know what exactly the MSME sector is doing as far as knowledge management is concerned, and science, engineering, and technology is concerned, particularly computer science is concerned, how they could contribute, or how they are contributing, or what problems do they have, and how we could work on this. So we started working on MSME sector, then added knowledge management, how knowledge management, what is the capability, outcome of knowledge management. Then we looked at big data is contributing in a big way to knowledge management, and forward knowledge management is contributing to MSME sectors. Also, this research is not at all empirical research. This is a theory building. So our later stage will take up theory testing. So we have looked at various literature, and this article we have written as a book chapter is more apt for a book chapter. It's not, we keeping in mind for a book chapter which people to read as a book chapter we have written. This is not exactly a, what I mean to say, this is not exactly a research article. This is a book chapter specifically. So let's move on. So what we have done, actually, we have started looking at in my presentation, I'll look at the big data, its capabilities, then what is knowledge management we'll discuss, then how big data is influencing knowledge management, and followed by how big data through knowledge management is influencing MSME sector. So let's move on. So this is the background of big data. Most of you are aware of, data. The data science has moved from this stage to a greater stage. In a recent time, innovation, open sources technology, commodity hardware, cloud computing, data-driven applications, visualization technique have paved this way to revolutionary change in business model and data technology space. This has resulted in creating enormous opportunities for human creativity to produce novel insights. In the era of information, a huge amount of complexity and varied data are being structured and designed, developed. So this is the flow, 3 V's we are discussing: variety, velocity, and volume. This is the big data value chain we look at. There are different researchers, they have already identified 6 stages or 6 steps in value chain: data generation, data acquisition, data pre-processing, data storage, data analysis, and data visualization and expressions. I don't think the scope of the discussion we have the time to discuss in elaborations, but I'm just touching upon. Then let's move from big data to knowledge management. In knowledge management, 4 key aspects we look at: discovering and capturing new knowledge, knowledge acquisitions, then knowledge storing and sharing, and knowledge application. So when we are doing the background of this, we look at the organizational knowledge. It has 3 major drivers: people, process, and know-how. People are the employees, the top management, and the workers, how they explicit, implicit knowledge we are creating, and how we are recording, retrieving, processing, and analyzing, and using, and disseminating, and sharing with others. The process, the flow of our work, and the know-how is the platform or the technology we are using for this. Let's move on. Then I move to the discussion. The big data, how it is influencing knowledge management. It's in a structured way. We have put it in a framework. The data processing, it moves to information processor, all these influence and the knowledge action, and then we get into sustainable performance. So these are few processes we are look at, knowledge management process. These are the tools we use, some of the examples, and some vendors who are offering. These vendors are not only working for large industries, they are working for small and medium and micro industries. They are offering a lot of free tools and supports and softwares, and Government of India, Ministry of Information Technology is also, and Ministry of MSME is also supporting small and medium micro industries, organizations to take advantage of these tools and these softwares, openly available softwares. Let's look at then MSME sector. With the new government framework, the MSME sector has been revived, and the turnover has been enhanced, and now the MSME in MSME sector, the manufacturing and services are being clubbed. For example, in micro sector, the investment less than 1 crore and turnover less than 5 crore has been captured as in the category of micro. And these are the few examples, in the industry specific or different verticals of business, where in MSME sector, where knowledge management with the help of big data we have been using. So, for example, retail, healthcare, education, e-commerce, media and entertainment, telecom, so on and so forth. These are the industries, small industries, they are small support services they are using and taking advantage of knowledge management with the help of big data. These are the key drivers for big data uses for MSME. ubiquitous competitiveness that force them, take advantage of knowledge management, how they can stay at the edge and take advantage of the situation, decision making, the time lagging, and all this is supporting digital narrative. How you place your churned out data converted to information, and how you make best use of it. The changing business
Dr.
models.
Preeti Ranjan, you have last 2 minutes. Please continue.
Yeah, for sure. I'll wind up. Thank you for reminding. Then some of the benefit and challenges we have identified through different literature, and we have placed for readers. So these are the benefits, and these are the challenges. We must overcome these challenges and take advantage of the benefits. So this is the takeaway for the MSME. And let me conclude by saying a famous quote. Mike Tyson, the famous boxer, he said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." Every company has a strategic plan coming into 2020. Then this COVID-19 walked into the ring. As well as we all are going through this largest humanity crisis of COVID-19, the need of the hour of every nation and organization to be Atmanirbhar. Our Honorable Prime Minister has already emphasized on Atmanirbhar and how it is important for us, and particularly in MSME sector, how we can take advantage of this technology, disruptive technologies, and fostering innovations, empowering MSME sector in medium to long-term range. In order to survive, save future MSME enterprises, integrated knowledge management in building organization knowledge help in attaining sustainable competitive advantage. So these are the few takeaways for MSME sector to adopt big data with the help of knowledge management and take advantage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Preeti Ranjan.
My pleasure. Should I stop sharing?
Yes.
Yes, please. Question and answer.
Dr. Sahu?
Sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Dr. Sahu, it is always beneficial to use technology for the industry, right?
Sir.
And you said that we can, I think it's a survey paper.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a survey paper.
Okay, so can you brief about few of the characteristics where it means you find that there would be enough scope for applying big data, because there are few of the characteristics of big data applications. So what characteristics in SME is matching with that? It means with the applications of big data.
Sir, actually, MSME, they have big challenge of investment and the knowledge level of the employees. But the big companies, big IT companies, they are supporting now. Say for example, IBM, they are providing softwares, free softwares, and there are many open available resources and softwares which MSME sector must take advantage. And the cluster of MSME also, they are forming groups, and through the government support, say district development MSME sectors and all these through training and process, they can always support. And the cloud computing and all this, they need not have their IT infrastructure, but they can take advantage of processing their data, retrieving valuable information and applications, and doing the network.
So I mean it means for big data there should be the volume and velocity and other characteristics.
Right.
So just I wanted to confirm from your side, it means where is the structured, organized information is producing so it can be matched with the requirement of big data.
Sure, sir. Even small MSMEs, whose turnover is less than 1 crore, they are also having lot of data, and they do not know how to process these data and convert into valuable information. Say, for example, customer insights or new product design development. So if they work independently in isolation, then they cannot take advantage. So they have to network, and they have to learn from the environment. And the biggest support from IT industry and ITES is in a lot of freely accessible, available training support, infrastructure are there, the MSME sector must take advantage of those.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Preeti Ranjan. Now move forward. I would like to invite our next presenter, Dr. Kalyani. I think Dr. Kalyani is absent. So I would like to invite our next presenter, Pallavi.
Yeah, good morning. Is it audible to you?
Yes, Pallavi, it's audible.
Yeah, I'll be sharing my screen. Yeah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Is my screen is visible to all?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to quickly introduce myself. I'm Pallavi Enkati, studying MTech final year in Computer Science and Engineering Department from Basaveshwar Engineering College, Bagalkot. I'm glad to present my topic, that is IoT-based smart farming application for sustainable agriculture through this virtual mode. Now let's start started. Today in this presentation, I'm going to discuss introduction about the sustainable agriculture, uh, issues and challenges regarding the traditional agriculture practices, the purpose of the project, problem statement of my proposed methodology, results, conclusion, and the references. Agriculture is a backbone of Indian economy as it contributes to 1/5 of the total exports of the country. Agriculture started along with the human civilization, but it was totally dependent on the nature. The use of chemical fertilizer started during 1850 in Western countries, but in India it started in 1965 along with the Green Revolution. High yielding hybrids entered our farms, and chemical fertilizer usage to get higher yield from these hybrids will come into scene. This paid attention of indiscriminate use of this chemical fertilizer. The excess use of chemical fertilizer and inappropriate use of chemical fertilizer will have a lot of bad effects on soil quality, environment, and health of the human being also. The soft top soil will be get hardened due to chemical residues, and groundwater is also polluted. We lost the rich biodiversity and the balanced nature before we got alerted. So hence the sustainable agriculture is the only solution for all these stated problems. Sustainable agriculture is the efficient production of safe, high-quality agriculture product in a way that protects and improves the natural environment, socio-economic condition of the farmer. Nutrients are very essential for plant growth. These nutrients are present in the soil and water. Soil contains 16 major nutrients. Among them, the major nutrients are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. The plants acquire these nutrients from the soil and also water. Smart farming is a modern farming concept which combines the traditional agriculture practices with a state of art technology like IoT and the machine learning. IoT is an ecosystem of connected physical objects that are accessible through the internet. We can access a physical device through the internet via using IoT technology. Machine learning is a process by which a system learns by which a system improves the performance from the experience. Machine learning focuses on the system program which can get information and utilize this information for learning themselves. Hence, the IoT and ML technology helps us to analyze the data, exploration of the data, also visualize the massive data set using high-level abstraction. I have, as part of my literature survey, I went through around 25 research papers related to smart farming of the existing agriculture practices. The traditional method of laboratory soil and water testing. Hello, is it audible?
Yes,
You are
it's
audible.
Hello.
Pallavi, go ahead with
Hello.
your work.
Yeah.
You are audible. Go ahead with your work or
Yeah.
implementation part.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the traditional method of laboratory to soil testing will consume it will be time consuming, and the laboratories will be located at some selected district places. So the farmer has to take the soil sample from their field to the district places to get the soil tested. And the use of chemical fertilizer will degrade the soil quality, will also have a bad impact on the environment. Over use of chemical fertilizer and fertilizer will affect the soil to get eroded. It also have a bad impact on soil quality, that is water holding capacity of the soil get eroded. So lack of awareness to adopt state of art technology tools and technology among the farmers community in agriculture. Farmers have lack of awareness regarding the latest technology in the agriculture sector. Reduction of yield due to improper selection. Nowadays, due to this pandemic COVID-19, some of the IT, not only IT persons, some of the other sector other professional persons also coming to their villages, and they are willing to work in their agriculture field, because since they are not by profession agriculture, so they don't have proper knowledge about like selecting the crop, and how to select a crop and how to use a fertilizer. So because for those people, the developed mobile application will help in selecting the suitable crop based on their soil quality and the soil type. The farmers are also from this mobile
Pallavi, you have
application.
last 2 minutes. Please conclude your presentation.
The proposed work, the problem statement states that the design and develop smart farming based mobile advisory mobile application to address the soil nutrients and pH of irrigation water, and also select the this is the objective, and this is the proposed methodology. We have developed mobile application which is used by the admin and the farmer. We have certain facilities like view the register and view the register farmer details, predict the crop, and buy the crops by the APMC admin. Farmer has also have the ability to test soil nutrients of their field with the crop suggestion suggested by the farmer. He also have the facility to sell the crops. This will be the block diagram of the IoT based soil and nutrient testing. This is a crop prediction, data collection, data collection. We will collect the data collection. We collect the crop parameters such as temperature, soil type, and the moisture content of the soil. Data pre-processing. We'll clean the data of the collected data. We'll construct the knowledge base with a pre-processed data. Data partitioning. We'll partition the data. Since I'm using the SVM classifier, we'll partition the data into training data and the testing data for robust estimation of the crop. Machine learning will adapt, as I said, I'm using support vector machine. It is a supervised machine learning algorithm to train the model by employing the training data set for a crop prediction. The output of this algorithm is to suggest a suitable crop and the appropriate fertilizer for the farmers. We established a direct communication link between the APMC and the farmers for purchasing and for selling their crops yield. The mobile app also helps in creating awareness about the latest tools and technology for sustainable agriculture. This is a proposed methodology block diagram, and this is the experimental setup. This is a result. This is the IoT based experimental setup to test the soil and water nutrients. This is the result. I have serial monitor output for soil sample which I have collected. This is one more pH of irrigation water, the pH of output for pH of water. This is a mobile application. This mobile application can be used by both APMC admin and the farmer. Once the farmer has registered to the APMC, the registration will be sent to the APMC admin for the approval. Based on their approval, he'll get authorization to log into the app. So once he has a approval, he can upload the readings, he can sign the agreement, sell the crop, and claim the insurance. So this screen will show the crop prediction. Once the uploaded crop data will be sent to the APMC admin, he can predict the crop and can suggest to the farmer. He can also have the agreement. He can also offer agreement for farmers. This agreement includes, in case of natural disaster, in case of natural disaster, farmers lost their yield. In case of such a situation, the APMC admin will pay some certain amount to the farmer for having the sustainable economy of the farmer, for maintaining sustainable economy. He can also sell the crops to the farmer. This too will shows the claiming the insurance in case of such a natural disaster occurs. Conclusion.
Pallavi, go ahead with the conclusion.
Conclusion. Through this, I conclude that since farmers are since agriculture is the backbone of Indian economy, we need to adopt some state of art technology in agriculture sectors, determination of soil NPK and pH of irrigation water, which is very essential for the plant growth. Through this machine learning, crop prediction and suggestion of the fertilizer will help the farmers in getting higher yield. So farmers are also will also get the knowledge of the tools and technology to automate their agriculture practice. Thus, a mobile application ensures the fair price for the crop yield through the direct communicating with the APMC and APMC to sell their crops. These are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi. A session
Hello.
chair, any comments?
Yeah, Pallavi.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, Pallavi, it's a very novel work you are proposing because we seriously need to develop the technology for our farmers. But I want to suggest you because you have presented a big idea where you are trying to integrate lot of things, whether it is a prediction of the crop or whether it is need of the fertilizer, whether it is a calculation of the pH and other parameters. So what I would like to suggest here, framework is okay, this model is okay, but if you can present something concrete in the presentation, like you have shown a diagram of the environment setup where you have put a few of the sensors on the table, but actually when you have to get the data from the farm, then the environment is much more different than the experimental environment. So these are the challenges, and how you can address these challenges, how you can get the correct data from entire farm, okay, and how can you do any of this activity, whether it is the crop prediction or whether it is the need of the fertilizer or whether it is the measure of humidity or pH or any of the thing, okay. But if you can provide your contribution in just one direction but with the depth, with the proper statistics, I think it would be very helpful for the researchers, and that is from my end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, I'll take your consideration. Yeah, thank you so much.
Amita ma'am, any comments regarding this presentation?
I think so ma'am has facing some audio issues. So if ma'am any particular comment, directly write to the chat board to the presenter also. So it will help to presenter too. Go ahead with the next teacher.
Okay, I would like to invite our next presenter, is a Meghna. Hello.
Hello.
Yes,
Good morning, everyone. Just a second. Hello. Hello.
You are audible, Meghna. Go ahead.
I'm facing issues with presenting the power.
Just go ahead with the share screen. In the bottom part, green share screen option is available.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Fine.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Meghna and today I will be presenting my paper which is Advanced Signal Processing for Ground Penetrating Radar. What was exactly the motivation for this research is actually this ground penetrating radar is a high frequency electromagnetic detection device used for landmine detection and other applications like detection of buried cylinders, buried bombs, etc. So this paper addresses the problem of analyzing and improving GPR performance in detecting and characterizing objects in the background of clutter and noise. Clutter is nothing but a false target information. So the problem associated with this work was the extraction of required target signal or buried under noise and clutter whose characteristics kept on changing with various type of salts and along with the harsh environment. So basically this paper focuses on enhancement of target information in the background of clutter and noise by using simulated data for comparison and evaluation of different algorithms. So what exactly GPR is a GPR provides detailed information of the existence of buried artifacts under favorable conditions. But certain environmental specifications like maybe rain, wind, dust, stormy, so along with the characteristics of the soil have a greater impact on the GPR and it might drastically reduce the performance of a ground penetrating radar. So as we can see here, this is exactly how a GPR works. So GPR transmits an electromagnetic signal into the soil and when when the signal touches the target, it actually reflects back into the atmosphere, giving us a phase. So, but along with this, there are many characteristics like air-soil interference, transmission coupling laws, retransmission coupling laws that comes into picture along with echoes, noise, and clutter. So the performance of the detection algorithm degrades when the clutters are formed. So the clutter occupies a very broad spectrum around the target, but the spectral spread causes either increase in the false alarm rate and mask the actual target detection. So when in the certain applications, this might cause a lot of problem. So a novel method, mathematically how this is represented is the transmitted signal is given by this first equation, where E naught is the amplitude of the signal and F naught is the frequency of the signal and phi naught is the signal phase. So the received signal, as we can see here, it comes along with the clutter and noise, along with some time delay. Now, in this method, we are proposing a different signal processing chain to overcome these problems. So the methodology actually falls under piecewise linear analysis. That is, we actually try to develop it and test it with all the filters. Only if it works, we have implemented it in the signal processing chain. So the results are compared based on the parameters like SNR, range, resolution, etc. Moving on to the methodology, as we can see, the first block diagram is the data generation. An LFM, that is a linearly frequency modulation wave, was actually used in this because of its easier, we could implement it easily. So it is actually known for providing excellent information when used in pulse compression. So as we can see, it contains in-phase and quadrature phase components, and it is given by the first equation. Where F naught is the radar central frequency and mu is the LFM coefficient. But here the radar frequency that was actually used was around 250 megahertz, which will be explained later in the results. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
So as we can see here, I've shown you two signals. So the first one is actually our LFM data that we generated. And the second figure shows the received signal at the receiver end. As we can see in the second figure, I have actually simulated one target along with two clutter and added some noise. As we can see, it is pretty difficult here to figure out which is the target and the clutter because all of them are in phase. So this is the main difficulty. So now moving to the next block, that is pulse compression. What is the exact motivation or goal of this block is it actually helps us to increase the SNR or increase the target detection capacity along with in the presence of noise and clutter interference. So we actually transmit a short pulse, and when this echo of the short pulse returns, it is passed through a match filter, which is usually a low pass filter. Thereby, the faster end frequencies pile up on top of the lower frequencies. This results in a higher target detection capacity, so it enhances the SNR ratio. Therefore, it provides an excellent range resolution and provides maximum power. Therefore, here what exactly happens is the reference signal, as we can see here, the reference signal is multiplied with a windowing function, and then the FFT and the conjugate of it is taken along with the received signal FFT, and then it is compared and the IFFT of the whole signal is taken. So the output of a match filter is given by the convolution of the signal H along with the impulse response. So as we can see, this is the equation that represents it. So the match filter output in the frequency domain is given by G of omega is H of omega into S of omega. Now coming to the next block, now that we have already increased the target detection capacity, next one comes is rejection of clutter. So the main motivation of moving target indicator is to get rid of the clutter, and here what exactly we have done is we have employed a delay line circuit in this configuration. So how MTI works is that the return from the stationary targets have the same phase, therefore they cancel out, whereas the moving target will have different phase, and hence that is the only thing that retains. Here what we have done is we have actually employed 3 different configurations, that is a single delay line canceller, that is nothing but the 2-pulse MTI canceller, double delay line, and a 3-order delay line canceller. So as we can see, a single delay line canceller has a single delay unit where the time delay T is the inverse of the number of pulse repetitive frequencies, which is given by this equation. But the main disadvantage was that it produces a very low computational load and has very less clutter. So hence we moved on to double delay line canceller, which employs 2 delays, of course, in a cascaded form. So well, this gave a very wider clutter rejection spectrum. So we thought, why not move on to the next one, that is the 3rd-order delay line canceller. So this is a 3rd-order delay line canceller is nothing but cascading double delay line with a single delay line canceller, and this provided a better clutter rejection ratio than the double delay line canceller. Next comes the coherent integration. So the output of the MPI can be only appreciated once coherent integration is done. So the received signal is only resolved in range. Therefore, we also need to get rid of the noise. So coherent integration suppresses the noise and interference, thereby increasing the SNR ratio, and it preserves the relationship between the received pulses. The integration is done for each and every pulse repetitive intervals, and an endpoint FFT to select depends upon the number of pulse repetitive intervals.
Meghna, you have last 2 minutes. Please
Yes.
conclude your presentation.
Yeah. Now coming to the simulation results, as we can see, this is the received data along with target and clutter, and we can see there's a bit of a phase difference here. A constant pulse duration of 10 microseconds was taken. Here, this shows the output, this is the received signal, and the pulse compression output is taken for this. As we can see, there is a considerable increase in the SNR ratio and a better target detection capacity. And this is a mesh format, which actually makes everything more clear. As we can see, there is a very clear target, distinction between the noise and the target here. Now, of course, this is the MTI output. We can see the clutter has been gone, but any much difference cannot be made between these 3 because I'll tell you, only FFT we can appreciate it. Here, this talks about the FFT of the single delay line canceller. As we can see, there's only single notch out here. But this is not appreciable as we got a gain of 32.16 dB. And of a 2-pulse canceller, as we can see, it is considerably way better than the single pulse canceller, because there's a proper isolation between the target and the clutter as it takes a dip and then it goes up. So, and it gives a wider broad clutter rejection spectrum. And the 3-pulse canceller output has a way better gain compared to that of a 2-pulse to double delay line canceller. And therefore, we settled for the 3-pulse canceller output. And here a comparison of all the FFTs between all the 3 single pulse canceller, 2-pulse canceller, and 3-pulse canceller is shown clearly here. And we can see that the 3-pulse canceller has way better gain compared to that of all the others. So in conclusion, I would like to say that an efficient radar detection method is proposed, which can be used in the present day GPRs, and the data has been modeled, simulated, and tested on MATLAB. The results of simulation shows significantly improved performance and efficiency compared to the traditional generic radio detectors. The proposed method provides a dynamic range and resolution along with reduced computational complexity. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Tell me.
Yeah, Meghna, it was good presentation, and I think all the statistics, graph, everything is justifying your work. So nothing much is to ask from my side. And what's your future plan in this direction?
Our future plan is to implement more algorithms. So there are certain algorithms like SVD, that is like the SVD, EVD, and we are actually trying to incorporate in this, but it's a little difficult. So that's actually our future plan.
Okay. Okay. I think we can go ahead with the next presentation.
Thank you, sir. As per the emergency duty, the Dr. Amita Sharma ma'am will leave now. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your support and present. We will share you your token of thanks, presentation certificate, participation, and sharing the session certificate to you after this session. Thank you, ma'am. Now we can go ahead with the next presentation, and Dr. Satyen sir will chair the same session.
So now I would like to invite our next session, next presenter is Ayushi.
Hi, my name is Ayushi, and I'm a student at the Ruba Ambani International School. I just finished my 10th grade and I'm going to go to the 11th grade in August. I'm very passionate about robotics and I've participated in multiple competitions like WRO, which is the World Robot Olympiad, FRC, which is one of the most advanced robotics competition in the world. There are only 3 teams in India, and as compared to like 4,000 teams in the United States. And I've also represented India at this competition called the First Global Challenge as part of the first all girls team. So now I'll just be sharing my screen. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes, go ahead.
So the sudden outbreak of the coronavirus has brought the world to a still, and I decided to pursue my interest in robotics to make a difference. Today I will be talking about my paper titled Design of a Robot for Healthcare Assistance in the Times of COVID-19. I will begin this presentation with the introduction, followed by a brief overview of the literature review, the software I have used to design the robot, the methodology, results I obtained, conclusion, and future scope for improvement. With the world reeling under the COVID-19 pandemic, maintaining distance from fellow humans is the new social interaction norm, and the medical fraternity and health workers are in need of additional help. Robots have been making a profound impact in assisting and simplifying medical procedures and healthcare facilities around the globe. It has already established its prominence in multiple applications such as sensory prosthetics for amputees, exoskeletons in rehabilitation centers for delivering targeted physical therapy, microbots for delivering medication to a specific part within the body, and humanoids as assistants to doctors. My paper proposes a design of a low-cost, remote-controlled robot to assist in delivering food trays to patients in hospital wards while maintaining healthcare guidelines. The following papers have been discussed as part of the literature review. The papers discuss the role of robots in dispensing medicines, helping the elderly as partners, and assisting doctors and healthcare workers in medical procedures. Now I'll move on to my methodology. In order to design the proposed model in this article, I followed the following steps. I first decided and established the designs of my complete model, and then decided the dimensions for each component. Next, I created 2D drawings of my design on Fusion 360, after which I used multiple features that the software offers to create my three-dimensional model. I then applied advanced features such as fillet to make the design more efficient, and I used tools such as the appearance tool to change the material, color, and texture of the robot. So the software that I used to do all of this was Fusion 360. So similar to SolidWorks, Fusion 360 is a cloud-based designing tool that gives one the opportunity to design, model, and simulate their projects digitally. Some of the features that the software offers are as follows. So it replaces the lengthy process of manual design with a quick, efficient, and automated process. So instead of drawing everything, which is very time consuming and requires a lot of precision, you can do all of that just on your laptop. Then it also provides you with three-dimensional views of whatever designs that you create. And another advantage is that it allows you to make multiple designs to the same, multiple edits to the same design. So if it were on paper as compared to the software, then you'd have to put in a lot more effort and it would be way harder to correct any mistakes. But this allows you to do that. And it also reduces manufacturing costs because you don't need to build as many prototypes with each edit that you make. So this is the Fusion 360 user interface, and this is just how the software looks. So some of the tools offered over here is what I used to create my design. This is just an example of one of the robots that we had built for the competition that I participated in. So this is just a few techniques that I used to build it. For example, creating a sketch, how I created the lines on the robot, how you can create different shapes like rectangles and circles. So that was just a brief discussion about the software. And so I've used all of those things to create my final design. And as you can see it over here. So I first created all the components separately and then assembled all of them together once they were all ready. So the picture on the left is the final robot design. So this is how the robot will look once it is implemented. And yeah, and these two pictures provide a more detailed and closer look at each component. Uh, yeah. So in conclusion, we're all aware that thousands of people and healthcare staff have been infected with the deadly coronavirus. And what this model attempts to do is minimize human interaction. So hence preventing the spread of the disease. So in order to improve this, I have a few things. So the proposed design has been developed on Fusion 360. However, the physical prototype is yet to be built. So keeping that in mind, it can be improved in the following aspects. So it can be implemented on a larger scale by having more food racks to provide more patients and hence increasing its working efficiency. For example, over here, I have shown only 4 food racks, but once you implement that, you can have multiple instead of just 4. Then the working of the robot can be automated as compared to remote control so that it requires even less human interaction. And in this proposed design, the material that I used is aluminum. However, we can use the same thing. We can use hard acrylic to make it more cost efficient and lighter as well. Yeah. So these are some of the references that I used in my paper. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
It's a good idea, and looking the current scenario, I think there would be need of similar kind of robots. So further detail you have to explore, and best wishes for the future work.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Can we go ahead with the next presentation?
Yeah, I would like to invite our next presenter. So Nitish Chandra. I think Nitish Chandra is absent. So I would like to invite Mohammad Rizwanul.
Yeah, thank you very much, and very good morning. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Mohammad Rizwanul Haq. I'm working as an assistant professor in one of the largest private universities in Dhaka, Bangladesh, East West University. And today I'm going to present 2 works which has been done with my undergraduate students. So the first presentation going through now, I'm sharing my screen with you guys. I think you can see my screen.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Right, so this is our first paper, the machine learning based approach on predicting suicidal ideation. My co-authors are Monami Mujumdar, Anika Tabassum, and Jennifer Moushumi. All of them are my undergraduate students, and they have recently completed all the requirements for their BSc degree. This is our today's talk, the overview of our today's talk. We're going to talk about, of course, the motivation of this work, the primary objectives, the data set, how it has been collected, the models we have used, the machine learning models, and there will be result discussion, and we are going to talk about our conclusion and the future work. So the motivation of this work is, as we know, that the suicide, there are a lot of, the tendency of the suicide, it keeps going nowadays, we can see. So according to the World Health Organization, every 40 seconds a person dies due to the suicide. So there are a lot of, we can say, unwanted deaths throughout the world. So if it can be identified beforehand, then suicide-prone person or a person who has got the suicidal ideation, they can be persuaded by the therapist or by the right person and talked out of committing this act. And through the help of this study, so what is the purpose, what is the motivation of this study? So without using any medical professionals' help, because sometimes it's not really convenient, and also in our society, that's sometimes also becomes difficult in the, this South Asian society. So with this particular application, what we can achieve, we can at least assess the prone, or we can at least assess the ideation of the suicidal fact for a particular person, so that they can be attained without having access to their medical records. Then the next is the background study we are talking about. So there are a few studies, of course. In one of the studies which has been done by the Taiwan Suicide Prevention Center, using the mental health records, they have predicted the suicidal inclination with 85% accuracy. The medical records in a broad clinical database, researchers have also designed machine learning models that predicted potential suicidal attempts based on their social media data, the tweets we used to share, the Facebook status we used to share. Based on those statuses, it can be also predicted. And there are some very important, you can say that psychological tests. There are some psychological scales have been established, and one of them is the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, which we have found during this background study. It predicts suicide ideation quite accurately, and the psychologists or psychiatrists all over the world, they use this particular scale to predict this suicidal ideation. So what we have done in our work, this is our main objective. We want to predict the suicidal ideation, and at the same time, we want to analyze the model performance. So first of all, we have collected the data. So whenever we have collected the data, there are some, as I have told you, some established suicidal rating scale. So we have used those suicidal rating scale, the Beck depression inventory, the Beck index. Then there is also another questionnaires related to suicidal, related to predicting the suicidal ideation fact. So we have used those rating scales, and we prepared a Google survey platform. And then 99 individuals completed the survey, and there are some missing data. Some people don't want to give us the data. We have also collected their Facebook status, the Facebook post of the last 3 months. So as you know that the Facebook status is very difficult to mine automatically. So they have simply given us the zip file of their Facebook statuses for the last 3 months, okay, only the status. So we have got them. So, and then from there, there were some, I mean, there was few people who doesn't really post in the Facebook. So we have to sort them out, and we have to filter them out. So at last 85 users, in fact, that is our user data set out of 85 users. And the attributes of the data set, so we have collected the 6 demographic data like age, sex, right now, the profession. Then the 45 multiple choice self-report inventories that is coming from the already established suicidal rating scales. There are 3 cutoff scores for each of the features. The social media status, that means, as I have told you, the Facebook post we have collected. So those also the part of our data set, and of course the prediction class. The ground truth, it has been established by analyzing this Columbia suicidal rating scale data set, because since this is the most accurate one based on the medical professionals, so the outcome of that particular rating scale we have used as the ground truth for our machine learning model. Next, we are going to talk about the data model. So what we have done, in fact, so we have basically got the Facebook status from the user, the zip file that they have provided us. We have used their demographic data, some basic information, and the psychological data that comes from those standard scales. So using these 3 data, I mean 3 different types of data, we have basically built 3 different data models. One data model, it consists of everything: the demographic data, psychological data, Facebook status. Another data model, it contains only the Facebook status. Another data model, it contains only the psychological data along with the demographic data. The demographic data was common in all of these 3 data models. So we have just tried to see that whether the Facebook status itself can identify the ideation of the suicidal fact. And since this thing is very complicated, so as far as our understanding, we have also seen, as we have predicted, the Facebook status itself, it cannot identify the suicidal ideation properly. So you need some psychological data as well. So this particular thing would be discussed in my next slide. So here you can see that I'm going to talk about the performance of these 3 different models. So this is the first one, that the result you can see here of the data model with all the features. So whenever we have tried to bring all the features together, then we have seen that in most of the cases, the models are kind of...
Dear presenter, you have last 2 minutes. Please conclude your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. So most of the models, most of the machine learning models like support vector machine, decision tree, these are the classical machine learning models. So most of the machine learning models are kind of overfitting. Okay, this is because of, since we have used the Facebook status there. So for each and every Facebook status, there is a lot of data repetition, because all the other features needs to be also repeated in our table. So that's why these few models, they are kind of overfitting. And then we have got the knife bias. One is using the Gaussian technique, and there is the multinomial technique to remove the 0 probabilities. So the knife bias is in fact kind of the performance is, though we can clearly say it's not overfitting. And yeah, perhaps that would be our contender for the next few data models that we're going to present. Then with only the Facebook status, the performance is not good at all for all the models. Okay, so here we have identified that there must be some natural language processing technique, because Facebook status people, and also there is a case that people sometimes used to post their status in native language. We have to manually translate them. So there are a lot of noise in the textual data. So that noise is kind of represented here. Still, the knife bias is performing better than the others. And then this is our last model that we're going to talk about, the last result, that performance measurement of the data model with all the features except the Facebook status. So whenever you have removed the Facebook status, then the performance of each and every model, it becomes more stable. And here we can see the knife bias. It has got the most accuracy, precision, recall, and as well as the F1 value. So F1 score. So in conclusion, we can say from this particular performance that we have presented, that the knife bias which has been implemented on the data model 2, that is basically without the Facebook status over the different rating scales, those questionnaires, that performs better, that performs most, that gives us most reasonable and robust performance. Conclusion, so we have prepared 3 different data models. We have prepared our own data set. And from that data model, our recommendation is that the Facebook status is not really that much helpful for predicting the suicidal ideation, because people sometimes don't express that much in social networking site. Also, the data is kind of noisy. But if we can ask them the right questions, then perhaps it could be easily predicted before some unwanted deaths or before those unwanted events. In future, we'd like to work on the natural language processing. This is how we can extend our work. NLP can play a bigger role here. We would like to also, we are also thinking thinking about to apply the deep learning models, and perhaps that would be also an interesting work, that which psychological scale it gives us the most accurate result, or maybe we can also propose some modification of the questionnaires, of course with the help of professional medical persons. So these are few references, few important references from our paper, and that's the presentation of this paper. Thank you very much. Yeah, I can hear you.
Mohammadji, first of all, I would like to congratulate you because looking the current scenario, you have chosen very right topic. My question is not related with the technical, because you have shown that you have achieved a good performance, more than 82%. So my question is that how you will get the data in real time scenario, because model is okay, model is working very nicely, that is perfectly well, but how we can get the data in real situation, so we can it means control this suicide kind of cases.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. We have also thought about that how the real-time modeling about those things. So basically, whatever we have found out, or whatever we have just come up with, that the real-time modeling will be very difficult because this questionnaire is the user has to answer first some questions related to the different psychological standard tests, and extracting the data from the Facebook, that's really difficult. But the tweets we can mine in real time, that's a possibility. But given the nature of this problem, I think the real-time identification that you have pointed out, it would be really challenging. Let me put it this way. So right now we are still thinking about it, but the real-time identification of this prediction of this type of problem, that's gonna really the researchers need to think about it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mohammadji.
Actually, there is another paper of the same author. So, Mohammed Rizwanul, please present your next paper.
Yeah, thank you very much. That is also another work with my other 3 undergraduate students. So I'm gonna go for the next presentation. Thank you. Right, okay, so the title of this paper is Detection of Antisocial Personality based on the social media data. Antisocial personality.
We are not able to see your presentation slides of next paper.
Oh, okay. Let me check.
Just close the currently share screen and then again you can do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think now it is
perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so the title of our next presentation is Detection of Antisocial Personality based on the social media data. The co-authors of this paper is Shakil Mahmood, Masood Rana, Fahim Rubayat Jahir, and I was their supervisor. This is the work they have done for their undergraduate thesis. So in this paper, we're talking about the antisocial personality. So there are 3 antisocial personalities. One is the psychopathy, and there is the narcissism, and there is the Machiavellianism. So these are known as the dark triad. And if we can identify a particular person's antisocial personality, then perhaps we can counsel them, and our society will be more tolerant and more kind to each other's social values, religious values, and on the other issues. So that was our main intention, that to make a more tolerable society. And we are trying to use, since we're from the computer science students, so we're trying to use this machine learning approach, that how does it perform. So here, basically, our objective is to detecting the antisocial personality characteristics, and as well as we want to also compare the accuracies of the different machine learning algorithms. There are many work, okay, existing work we have found out that they are also trying to perform the similar things with different types of machine learning algorithms, as well as some standard questionnaires. So this is our proposed model. You can see the kind of big level overview. That is, first of all, we have collected the data. So in the data collection process here, we have got 100 participants. Collection of data is kind of really difficult because this is very personal data. Here we have also used the Facebook statuses. So this is very personal data. So sometimes people are not really interested to share their Facebook statuses, but we can convince 100 of them and they have given their data. Then we have pre-process the data. So during the data pre-processing, we have used the stemmer technique. We have tried to omit, we have tried to eliminate all the emojis that is quite common in Facebook or the other characters. Then after processing the data, we have used the TF-IDF vectorizer, okay, to get the sparse matrix. From there, we have tried to extract the features, and then after extracting the features, we applied these machine learning classifier algorithms: the SVM, support vector machine, the random forest classifier, and the knife bias. And basically, using these three algorithms, we have build our models, and then we have, of course, using the test data set, we have evaluate their performance, and at last there will be some discussion on the results. So this is the working procedure. I have already kind of given you an idea that how we have really continued our work, the data collection process first, which was really challenging for us. Still, I can recall that we have got hard time to convince the people that please give your data. Then the data pre-processing part, which is, as you know, that in data science or in machine learning, the data pre-processing is one of the key area that the researchers needs to really focus on. There is a rule known as 80-20 rule. That means 80% time you will spend for the data pre-processing and 20% time you will spend for the model development. Then using the TF-IDF vectorizer, we have extracted the features, and then we have applied these three algorithms. This is our result, what you have got from there. So we were presenting the result for each of these domain. So first of all, as you can see, Machiavellianism. Here, the knife Bayes algorithm and the SVM with the polynomial kernel, and RBF kernel as well, it gives us the best result of 91% accuracy. Then next up, we can see the narcissism, the accuracy for the narcissism. So here, all of a sudden, you can see that there is a decrease in our accuracy. We have found out the reason for that. I'm going to explain it after a while. So here, the knife Bayes performs better with 60% accuracy, but that is really low if you compare it to the Machiavellianism. And then this is the psychopathy. Here, the accuracy, the best accuracy is provided by the knife Bayes, around 68% accuracy. So this is for the precision evaluation matrix for precision recall F1 score for these three different personality traits for the best performer. This is for the random forest. So this is the what you have got for the random forest. Random forest performs really poor for these two particular dark trait feature, that is narcissism and psychopathy. But the knife Bayes, it performs little better. So over here, you can see the knife Bayes precision recall and F1 score, which is still a little better than the random forest and SVM, the support vector machine. So what we have found out that it is from this study that knife Bayes performs better for most for psychopathy, Machiavellianism, as well as narcissism, but it's really quite difficult to detect the tendency of narcissism and the psychopathy because the data variance we have found from the questionnaires or for the survey that we have collected, the variance of data is quite high there. So people have a lot of different opinions about the narcissism. So data was kind of some situations, some scenarios, and then people have come up with different answers. So since the data variance is too high, so there might be some outliers, and because of these outliers, basically the detection of psychopathy and as well as narcissism, it doesn't really work well. But for the machine learnism, the data set, whatever we have collected, it is quite good. The data variance is less, and it also performs better. I mean, for this particular dark thread feature, our machine learning algorithm performs well. So in future, we would like to build a prototype. Okay, right now this is still in the research stage. We didn't build a prototype, so we want to really deploy this particular model in real life application, and we'll see that how it performs. And the data set that we have used is really small. The 100 user data set is nothing. In fact, nowadays, obviously we have to collect the larger data set, but it's quite difficult without some organizational support. It's quite difficult to collect this much data. So that's another problem, and we would like to address this particular problem. And the other thing that we want to do from the technological point of view, from the scientific point of view, is we want to apply the deep learning based approaches like the some recurrent neural network model or LSTM, and we want to see that how those model performs here. These are a few references of our work. So that concludes my second presentation about this antisocial personality. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yeah.
Mohammed, the methodology is very much similar to your previous paper here. Right. My question for this model is that, is it possible that through our infrastructure, like right now, everywhere we are seeing a lot of cameras and all, we can trace a person, and it means different person, and whenever we found that it means this paper is related with the data on the social media, but can we apply practically through our it means in the street video, it means where it means there are lots of camera there implemented at different shops and all, and if we find any thing which is antisocial, it means behavior, so we can track it and we can control it.
Yeah, of course, why not? I think it's possible, but in that case, perhaps there are some ethical issues as well we need to consider as a researcher, that whether we can track each person's move or not. So that's the kind of a policy level issue. I'm not going into that part. But technologically, I think it's possible, because nowadays a lot of research is going on in this particular direction, computer vision, that using the person's gesture and posture, we'd like to predict what would be the next activity of that person. So yeah, I'm sure that solution regarding this particular nature, it's surely coming up, and it will also help perhaps our government to make a better society, maybe. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Yeah. So there is one more paper in this session. It's from Meenakshi Arya. Meenakshi Arya, please present your paper.
Yeah, good morning. Is the PPT visible?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. So I'm here to present our paper, which is titled as an LSTM-based fake news detection system using word embedding based feature extraction. Now, we all have been hearing and we all are on social media, and as my previous presenter set up a stage for me to talk about what we are exactly doing. So there's a lot of news available online, and a lot of news which can create or let's say make the minds of people biased. So because of the availability of so much of news online, we really don't know what news is fake and what news is real. So recently it has become a big challenge to detect fake news and to characterize it or find out the main characteristics which can discriminate between a real news and a fake news. So basically the fake news is intentionally written to mislead readers or to believe them into some false information, and which may cause a catastrophe. We have seen in America, the last presidential elections, a lot of it was driven by news which was generated. Some of it true, some of it fake. So we can actually change the politics, the demography, the geography of a particular area based on this fake news. So this is the abstract that fake news is basically a misinformation or manipulated news which is spread across the social media with an intention actually to impose certain ideas or to damage a person or to change the way people look at a certain specific event. Like I'll give a very recent example of the case of Sushant Singh Rajput. Now there is so much of news on online or on the social media that all of us have actually started hating the entire film industry without even being a part of it. So the kind of news or the articles which are coming and the kind of information that you are gaining every day is a big factor in determining how the society overall treats or deals with a specific incident or an event. So nearly 70% of people are concerned about the propagation of fake news because it impacts the mindset of the society as a large. So what we actually tried to do was we actually tried to form a system where we can label the news as fake or genuine or real. So this we have tried to use a new algorithm which was not used till now for characterization of news, that's called as the long short-term memory. This classifier is a very powerful classifier, and we try to find the best fit for the model using hyperparameter tuning. And we also used a new concept called as the word embedding using GloVe. So I'll be discussing about these terminologies in the subsequent slides. Basically, the novelty of the work lies in the way we are extracting features out of the news and the classifier that we are using for classifying whether the given news is fake or real. So for this specific project, we have done a literature review where we generally the outcome of the literature review was that people are generally focusing more on typical classifiers like k-nearest neighbor, support vector machines, or logistic regression. And wherever people have used LSTM also, they have used it with the traditional feature extraction techniques, which as per the literature are not very convincing, or they are not very good at extracting the features from the news that we have. So basically the LSTM has been backed up by our method on the basis of the literature gap that we saw. There were two gaps in the literature. One was that the models which were being used were very, very traditional, whereas they were not able to categorize the news clearly. And the second thing was that the feature extraction techniques which were being used, they were also pretty primitive. So they were not able to give us too much of an information or the extraction of features from the fake news. Then with this as the background, we set up these four objectives for our system. And the first objective was to design and develop a machine learning based fake news detection solution for online articles. The second objective, to analyze the data using word embeddings feature extraction technique. Third, to classify the model using LSTM technique to find the best fit for the model. And finally, obviously, to verify the feasibility or performance measurement of the proposed system. So this is the overall broad architecture of the system which we have proposed. So we had a database which comprised of 6,335 articles, where each article is characterized by its ID, the title, the text, and the label. So basically the system that we are proposing is a supervised learning algorithm where the training database is pre-labeled, and the training database that is used is split into 70:30. So we are using 70% of the database for training and 30% of it for testing. So the first step of the proposed architecture is data preprocessing, where we did the basic data preprocessing which is done as far as the text processing is concerned, that is conversion of lowercase, removal of punctuations, removal of stop words, and then finally tokenization, means breaking down the sentence into its corresponding words. Once we got the corresponding words, then we use the GloVe algorithm for feature extraction. And on the basis of features which were extracted at this stage, we use those features to train the model by creating an LSTM based classifier. And once the model was trained, then the test data was presented to it, and then we measured the accuracy or the performance of the system of how well it can classify the news as fake or real. So this is the general overall proposed architecture of our system. Now, the whole project was implemented, or the whole research was conducted in 4 phases. That is the pre-processing, feature extraction, classification, and ultimately performance evaluation. And 2 main algorithms which we have used are word embeddings, glove-based word embeddings, and long short-term memory. So what I'll be doing is I'll be taking you through each of the steps, and then subsequently I'll be explaining the algorithms and how they have been implemented in our case. So data preparation, well, I may use the term that they say data is the new oil, but the oil has to be somehow refined so that it gives us the product that we want. It's very, very essential. The news items that we had were huge news items which contained a lot of text. So we had to convert that particular data somehow, and we had to tokenize it so that we get the text into a sequence of integers, and each integer was represented as an index of a token in a dictionary. So the first job was to remove the stop words, and stop words included everything like articles, prepositions, conjunctions, pronouns. So they were all removed, and along with them words like as, about, and, or, they were all removed, and this particular data was passed on to the next step. Then tokenization basically is a process of tokenizing or splitting a text or string into a list of tokens, and a word is a token in a sentence. So when I divide a sentence into its corresponding words without the stop word, that is the process of tokenization. So for this, we use the Keras library of Python for tokenizing our data. And because, as I previously mentioned, that we had a huge repository of 6,335 articles, it was a pretty challenging job. So what we did is we used term frequency TF-IDF for doing the word count and then for tokenization. So this is how the data was read, and this is how the data looked like. So as you can see, as I told you, that the classifier is it's a supervised classification. So the original data that we had, it was a pre-labeled data where news was labeled as per fake and real. So after that, this was the way the data was cleaned and how stop words were removed. And we also used the NLTK library for removal of stop words. Then the second step was to apply the glove embedding system. Now, the glove actually is a full form, it's a short form for global vectors, and which is basically a model for distributed word representation. So this model, though it's an unsupervised learning algorithm, it is actually used for obtaining the vector representation of words. Now, as we all know, computers only understand the language of zeros and ones. That's a very common thing. So if you present anything in the form of zeros and ones, it becomes easier for a system to apply classification to the system. So what we actually did was that we used glove word embedding so that all the words can be clustered or grouped together. So as you can see over here, you can see the terms like battery, charger, tool, sword, devolved, Bosch, drill. They all correspond to the same group of words. So are fan, light, bulb, LED, they are all things which glow. So this is the way your word embeddings are used, so that all the words which belong to a specific genre are clustered together, and then you accordingly work on these words, and then you give them as an input to the glove embedding. So basically what we try to do in a glove embedder is we try to minimize the loss as we try to do in linear regression, but we just change the function a bit. As you can see, we have used a log regression function also over here, and we have also used a weighing function to minimize the loss. So this is a very, very helpful approach which helped us in seeing that the loss that we are getting out of removing the stop words or tokenization is minimized. This is the way the glove feature extraction was used. So the entire data set was passed on to it, and then finally we got an embedding matrix which was completed, and we got the output as the feature vector. Now this feature vector was given as an input to the LSTM. Now this LSTM is a very, very recent classifier, the full form of LSTM being long short-term memory. They are basically a special kind of recurrent neural networks, and they are capable of learning long-term dependencies. Now, the biggest takeaway here is that news is correlated. You have to understand that the news piece which came yesterday may or may not be related to the news piece which came today. So we actually are looking at the long-term dependencies between various news items. So if some news came today, was it related to the news on the previous day? That's what LSTM actually tries to do. So we created the model using LSTM and embedding layers, and we created 4 layers in our model, and then we fed the embedding matrix to these embedding layers, and we defined the LSTM layer which returned the sequence of data. The model was trained, and then finally the news was classified as real or fake. So I've already explained to you, this LSTM actually is a short-term memory, and it is basically an extension of recurrent neural networks, but it works well for the data where there is a correlation, or where the data has a where the data is related to what happened previously. In that case, LSTM has been proven to be a very, very good classifier. So this is the
last
way.
1 minute.
Yes, I'm just winding up. So this is the way we implemented it. And then finally the performance evaluation was done. So I'll just come on straight away to the results. So this LSTM model was trained for over 10 epochs, and the accuracy that we obtained was around 84%, which is pretty good compared to what was the accuracy which people were getting previously. And the most accurate results, we also introduced a dropout rate of 0.1, which helped us in improving our accuracy. So these are some of the references that we have used. And thank you so much. Any questions? I'll be more than happy to take. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. Sir, any question?
It was very nice presentation, and the topic is very much relevant in today's problem. So, researcher has in-depth work on the topic, and I think the presentation was very good. Just we have to, she has to explore that how she can be embedded with the different social media and other platforms, so it can be used in real time. It's a good presentation. It was the good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. And once again, I thank you to all presenters to presenting their papers and our session chair. And now I would like to invite Dr. Amit Joshi for closing remarks.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And I think there are one person from outside India as well. So good evening or good afternoon, whatever the time zone there is. And happy to see you, Dr. Meenakshi Arya, once again from yesterday's session. And I give my regards to you. Then my thanks are due for this session to Dr. Satyen Parekh, who has taken a lot of pains being coming early morning at 9:30, starting his schedule early for this session. And I really thank and much appreciate your presence and efforts, because it takes time to.
Thank you, Amit ji. Actually, indeed, it's my pleasure to be part of this conference. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to your support in all our future endeavors as well. And then my thanks are also due to all the authors who have come and present their papers in this conference, and do a lot of efforts right from beginning, from submitting a paper to presenting it, to review, to changing according to the review comments, and then finally waiting for the paper to publish. So it's a whole cycle of almost 7-8 months, and you need to constantly review your things in that particular time span. So thank you very much to all the authors as well. And there are two announcements for authors. I have already announced it in many sessions yesterday also. This session also I'm announcing that we have already submitted the data to Springer, and we hope to get the publication soon in next 4 months on a pretty note of right time, but it may take a considerable more time depending on this process by Springer. Secondly, all the authors will be able to receive their certificates just after this just after this session on mail IDs, along with the payment receipt and the thank you letter. If you have any queries, please feel free to write to me or our team. They will be happy to support you in the best way possible. And I would like my team to share a token of appreciation in form of a certificate to Dr. Satyen Parekh also. Satyen sir, this is for you. We cannot give it physically, but we can appreciate you at least digitally. You will also receive this on the mail ID once the session is over, and thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you, Amit ji, and really it's a good initiative that you have started. It means conduction of these online conferences. Otherwise, it means we cannot promote research work due to the COVID situation. So congratulations to you also, Amit ji.
Thank you very much, sir, and look forward to your support and all the participants' support, because the major stakeholders in these conferences are the researchers who are doing a lot of efforts to make this research forums a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think 1 more minute we are open up this session, and then we will be able to close it. If anybody wants to chat or something, you can use the chat board, or even there are less number of participants, so we can make everyone speak up live also. That's fine for a minute. Thank you.
This is Dr. P.R. Sahu. I just want to say thanks to all for organizing such a beautiful online conference. For last 3-4 months, we are wondering where to present, how to present, and all this. You have given us an opportunity to present and see other researchers presenting good work. Thank you very much.
I want to say something. Since we are from Bangladesh, and during the registration process, we have faced many problems. Okay, and whenever I have sent email to the ICT4SD team, they were very prompt to reply those emails. Even I have sent the emails around 10 p.m. here. So Bangladesh is 30 minutes before India, as you know. So we are very close from the time zone. But I have got the email even at the night, the reply of the email. So it's really wonderful, because it might seem that it's very easy to arrange the online conference rather than a physical one. But as we work with these tools and technology, we know that in an online conference, everything could break down and nothing could be possible. But thank you, the ICT4SD team, for their cooperation to their authors and for making such an event, making such a great event. Thank you very much.